Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Red Circle. Also on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Plenty of messy content is on there as we speak. Also, check out our Winnow feed, as we call it Off the Floor. Go to winnow.app/off the floor. That's winnow.app/off the floor. You get texts from us directly to your phone, so you can bypass Twitter. Try to go all day long where there is content to actually deliver to you. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, Stones and More. You can find them at mosaics.com. This is a family-owned business serving the community for over 20 years. They've got dedicated customer service. They're wholesale distributors. They've got the best quality of porcelain and ceramic tiles, along with a wide variety of high-end mosaics with unique modern designs. Check them out at Mosaics. That's MOZIACS.com or 305-828-0940. Again, Stones and More at mosaics.com. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars. Wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. We got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. We're going to go through a couple of quick topics here today. We are still on Dame Watch. Of course, you can check out Starting Five. I did a whole episode on that. That's on the YouTube channel. Also, these days, you might want to be following Levitard's show as well, because he's been advancing the story, I think, more so from the Heat's perspective. So, basically, it's a good watch right now. And he's saying a lot of the same things that we've said, actually, about how Dame needs to make this ugly, which I think is what the Heat want. And I think ultimately that may be what happens, even if it's in the form of an interview with someone like, say, Chris Haynes. So we will see if that actually plays out. Okay, but right now, we're going to get into some comments on Twitter because the Heat hate continues even when they're trying to upgrade the roster. So let me throw this at you. And again, this guy changes his mind every 3 minutes. I'm a little bit stunned that he survived the ESPN cuts, but here we go. The Heat are not the favorites, nor would I have them the favorites, even if they picked up Lillard. I have everything invested into the Bucks. I don't want to disrespect Miami, but even if they get Dame and they were to face Milwaukee again, I'm picking Milwaukee. And this is from our friend Drew Starr. You can follow at Drew_Star. Look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, even if they change it every 3 minutes. But I'm just looking at the East, which is what we're going to do today. The Miami Heat have now beaten the Milwaukee Bucks 2 of the last 3 times in the postseason over the last 4 years. They've beaten the Boston Celtics 2 of the last 3 times in the postseason over the last 4 years. They are, in my view right now, not demonstrably worse than they were at the end of the season. I know that Greg and I have sort of a disagreement about that, but as I talked about with Brady, they're better in the front court. They are weaker in the back court. But I think they're pretty much a push. I mean, when you add what Josh Richardson's going to add, Thomas Bryant, if Jovic is still here, again, this is saying no Dame, okay, which I still think they're getting Dame. But then you add Jaquez, a more experienced Jovic to the mix. You've upgraded at your power. You have Kevin Love, who you didn't have at the start of last season. I think they're better, but slightly. And at worst case, I think it's flat, okay? I know Greg thinks they're a little worse, but either way. But I guess I just don't understand this incredible respect for Boston, Milwaukee, when the Heat keep beating those teams in the postseason, Alex. Like, and did I miss something? Did Milwaukee do something this offseason? Because I didn't. We can talk about Boston's change, but what did they do?
Added Malik Beasley. What do you mean? That's a game changer.
What are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing. It feels like all of these guys now, everything is just incentivizing who can. This has been the case for years now, but who can come out with the hottest take and who can do it first, right? I feel like that's kind of the game that a lot of these dudes are playing on TV. It's just a lot of like they're takesmen, right? It's less about how much you believe it and can you be first to this hot take that'll get everybody talking, because that's what everybody's looking for now, engagement. And I think Kendrick Perkins, along with plenty of other media members know that when you talk about the Heat in a negative fashion, like you're gonna get people all over your mentions. And I just think I look at everything through that lens now, first and foremost, and then after that, it's fine. He can have that opinion, and I think probably when you dig down into it, it has to do with the depth part, right? Like what Dame was talking about in that one podcast where it's like, oh, how much stuff will they need to give up in a trade for me or whatever? And I think people kind of look at it as, well, this team was an 8th seed. They're going to have to trade a lot of their depth. I already lost a couple of guys in free agency. And so they're basically doing it's a top heavy team. How much can 3 guys carry you? Excuse me. And I think along that kind of line of thinking, and that's where I think the disconnect comes from, because I think Heat fans are looking at it like, well, whatever is left is going to be enough, right? You might have flexibility for a future move if you keep Kyle Lowry in a deal who can be packaged for multiple contracts if you match the salaries. So Heat fans are looking at it through that view of, not only are they going to be, better than these teams, they should be the favorites. But you know what? It doesn't really bother me that much. The Bucks and the Celtics were supposed to be the favorites last season. And, they were kind of the favorites in the 2020 season, 2023. Like, those teams are always given more credit. And I understand, like last year, those were the 1 and 2 seeds, respectively. The Heat beat them both. The Heat beat them both. Right. I guess with Damian Lillard, again, like it has to be a thing about the depth, because like everybody knows who Damian Lillard is. Everybody knows what he can contribute. So to me, it's a lot of takesmanship going on over here.
But the thing is, okay, if Dame was going to either of those teams, let's just say that Dame was going to Milwaukee in place of Holiday or Middleton, choose. Or he was going, even if he was going to Boston in place of Jalen, okay, who's one of their 2 best players, that team would be anointed immediately the prohibitive favorite. These people want to have it both ways. It's like, well, the Heat aren't giving enough for this transcendent superstar. But if they get the transcendent superstar, they're not winning the East anyway, even though they just beat the 2 teams in the East that we're saying are going to beat them. It's ridiculous. And you're right. I don't understand, I guess, how the Heat became that foil. Because you would think it would be like Boston or the Lakers, like a team that has this sort of supposed national longtime fan base. And that's the other part. Why is it good economics, okay, or good trolling to go after the Heat all the time if the Heat have no fans? Right? Like, if the Heat have no fans, like, who are they trolling? Like, I thought the Celtics and the Lakers and the Sixers and all them have all, the Knicks have all the fans. Troll them. But this idea of continuing to troll a fan base that does not exist does not make any sense to me. So, honestly, Kendrick Perkins' opinion doesn't matter. It's more so the hypocrisy of some of these takes where it's just, if the Heat get Dame Lillard, they are the prohibitive favorites in the Eastern Conference. I'm sorry. Like, anybody can say whatever the hell they want. If you're adding Dame Lillard to Bam and Jimmy, who just went to the finals twice in 4 years, and the conference finals 3 times in 4 years, we know the Heat, whenever they trade, are going to have enough around them. Look, when they traded for Shaq and they traded 2 core players, and Brian Grant was playing for them, by the way, at that time, 2. So 3 rotation players, including 2 key starters and their second and third best players in Lamar and Karan. They didn't have a lot left. They still won the East in the regular season and got within 1 game of the finals and would have been there if Dwayne hadn't pulled his ribcage muscle. They figured it out with an unknown like Udonis Haslem and a journeyman like Damon Jones in their starting lineup. You don't think there's enough material left with the way that the Heat have developed players lately and what we just saw in Summer League that the Heat could cobble together 5 rotation players around? Considering Josh is going to be one of them, right? They could cobble together 5 rotation players around Jimmy and Bam and Dame. Who are we kidding here? Like, it's like, but it is almost like you just fire off the take without even looking at anything. I'm looking at the Eastern Conference just to us to do this exercise. It got worse. Like, I don't know that the Boston trade makes them better. Porzingis should, talent-wise, is he going to be healthy? And taking away Smart takes away something that made them kind of unique. He was their heart and soul in a lot of ways, even though I thought some of his game was overrated. Philadelphia is not better, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Harden. Embiid's miserable, obviously. Like, who else are we talking about?
But they added Patrick Beverley, so.
Right. Okay. I mean, like that's the big deal. And then I'm like looking at, okay, so beyond that, who else in the East? Okay, so who is finishing ahead of the Heat? The Nets. I mean, they're not better right now. They might add Tyler. Tyler will become the best player ever, by the way, Alex, if the Nets acquire him, because he'll be in New York. But like, okay, and who else finished ahead of them? Who was the
Cleveland?
Was that Cleveland? Okay, so Cleveland's added Max again. Another situation. Okay,
George
best
Niang?
shooter ever, right? Because he's no longer in Miami. Nobody respected him when he was in Miami. But they're not demonstrably better. Atlanta, I mean, gave up Collins, added what? Well, what did they add? What are we talking about here in the Eastern Conference? The Knicks? What have the Knicks done? What have the Knicks done? They're the same team.
They added Dante DiVincenzo, Ethan. What do you mean?
Right. Like, and now they're planning to try to make a run at Embiid. Like, what are we? So I'm looking at, and then the bottom feeding teams in the East. Okay, Orlando should be better. Detroit should be better. Indiana should be better. Are any of them threats to be a top 4 seed? No.
No.
I mean, Toronto doesn't know which direction they're going, and they've lost Van Vliet, right? What have they added?
Dennis Schroeder.
Okay, so they've gotten worse. Atlanta. I mentioned Atlanta already. Chicago. A lot of talk about what they were going to do. What have they done? They've lost Lonzo Ball for another season. Has anybody in the East gotten better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Honestly, that's a great question, and I think my immediate answer is no. I think the one team that you really make the case for, like you mentioned up top there, was the Porzingis stuff with Boston, right? Because he's individually, I think, probably a better player than Smart. But they not only lost him, and I agree with everything you said, heart and soul, great defensive player, not defensive player of the year caliber, but great defensive player nonetheless. And honestly, was their best point guard. I know, like he took a lot of shots that Heat fans mostly want to see him take. Like the scheme is when you play the Celtics, a lot of the time was dependent on Marcus Smart taking those shots. So it's kind of hard to look at him as a really valuable player. But what he does for him as a point guard too, on both ends of the floor. Then you lose Grant Williams on top of that. And Porzingis has the health concerns. Brogdon now has health concerns. Robert Williams always has health concerns. And I know you can say that for different teams, but it's just a puzzle that I'm not sure is fixed yet for the Celtics. Like, I'm not sure how I feel about that move if I'm a Celtics fan. So you can make the case that they got better, but even then, it's kind of shaky, and I kind of have to see how it plays out in their next
even Kendrick
playoff
Perkins,
run.
Celtics homer, has said he doesn't like that trade, right? We're cycling back to Kendrick. Sorry, it may work. It may work. I mean, it does make them more dynamic offensively. And Porzingis had a great season. I just don't trust him to stay healthy. And like I said, they don't really. I mean, the point guard situation is not great for them. No. And so you're putting the ball again in Jalen's hands a lot. Not something you necessarily want. But I'm looking at these. I'm like, okay, who's the sleeper that's going to jump up? There really is none. Like, I like Detroit's build. I like Orlando's build to some degree. Charlotte is way away from competing. The
sleeper could be Cleveland, like putting things together, but I'm not sure how much I believe in them, like
correct.
Going deep in the playoff.
Right, we have to see it in the postseason, but they're not marketably. I mean, they didn't. Again, they added Strus, so he'll replace some of Akura's minutes.
And George Niang,
who's awful. So yeah, it moved west again. Everything's moved west again, and so I mean, you're looking at the Heat, and you're saying, okay, and I'm not advising running it back. Obviously, I'm all in on the Dame thing. But the Heat very well could be a top 3 seed with their current roster. I mean, I believe that. I think so. I think now how much Jimmy sits, okay, what Tyler's mindset would be when he came back and all that. But I think there's more upside to their personnel this year than last year because I never really bought into Oladipo ever getting completely healthy. And so if you bought into Oladipo getting healthy, then yes, I would say last year. But I think there's more upside this year because of the potential of Jovic and Jaquez, because I do think Brian is an upgrade as a backup big because of Orlando Robinson's development and because Josh Richardson can stay on the floor and do more things than Max Strus. And I think Josh is going to have a very good year. So I actually think I believe that this is a better team they're taking to training camp than last year. I know some, again, disagree with me, and I'm open to that. But we thought they would possibly be a 4 or 5 seed last year. And again, I'm looking at the rest of and they finished 7th, obviously, and then dropped to 8th. But I'm looking at the rest of the conference and I'm saying, well, the way things have opened up for them, I mean, look, Philadelphia should be better coached, but it's going to take a little time. And people are talking up Milwaukee. I mean, they got a new coach. Like, everybody got on Bud, and I understand it. And I wasn't a huge Bud fan, particularly in the postseason, but they got accustomed to playing for him. And now they've got someone inexperienced there as a head coach. Giannis is great, but Middleton has shown signs of wear the past couple of years, and Drew just had his best season, and it wasn't enough. In a lot of ways, he had the best offensive season. All right. We're going to pivot off of this a little bit, but I just think it's worth putting into some perspective, because if they get Dame, they're the favorites. If they don't get Dame, I still think they could be a home court seed.
By the way,
yes.
Before you get to break, one thing we kind of in this topic here, the Sixers stuff going on right now.
Right.
Like, we don't know if Harden's going to be on the team, and if he is, he's probably going to be doing the fat suit stuff he did in Houston. Everybody's making those jokes, and like, we have no clue where like the Sixers fit in all of this, right? Because like theoretically, they just keep their team, they'll probably be a good regular season team again in theory, but you have no clue if Harden's going to actually try to play or if he's going to report.
Also, it's going to be a circus around Embiid now that he's put this stuff out there, so that becomes another issue. I think they've upgraded at the head coaching position, but we'll see. I mean,
Congrats to the New York Knicks in a year.
Right, precise. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, we always say that. That never ends up happening. It'll end up being somebody else. All right, we do want to mention a couple of our sponsors here. Our friend Arash, you can find him at mortgagebyarash.com. That's 954-651-2057. He's based in Sunrise. He can help service the entire area, though. He can help you if you got a credit score of 620 or greater. He has all the mortgage programs at his disposal. He'll work with you to get you the right deal and get it closed. Okay, so check him out. Mortgagebyarash.com. That's Arash Jamali. Again, 954-651-2057. That's 954-651-2057. Mortgagebyarash.com. Also want to mention Better Edge. We know the NBA is not going on right now. There's plenty to bet, and you can bet it legally at Better Edge. That's the cool thing. BetterEdge.com. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. You get $20 to bet. People are always asking me all the time, what's that betting site that's legal? This one is legal. We know they're haggling in the state of Florida and all this. This one, you don't have to haggle. It's legal in 44 states because you're betting against others who use it. You're not betting against the app. We also run all kinds of, or a bookie, you also run all kinds of contests there, polls, all kinds of cool stuff. We're doing giveaways. So check them out. Get on there. BetterEdge.com /, 5 reasons, or just use the code 5RSN. All right, real quick. I'm not going to devote a whole lot of time to this, but I had mentioned this to Brady yesterday. We were doing our episode. So we mentioned we talked about a log jam in San Antonio with a whole bunch of players. Lamar Stevens got the axe, and there may be others. Just real quick here, give me a short list of guys that you think, whether it's the Spurs or elsewhere, that could be available if the Heat are looking to add maybe one more player eventually.
Okay, well, that part is a little tougher and more complicated, right? So just to quickly outline it, right? The Spurs, now they have less players now since they just waived Lamar Stevens, and he was the most obvious one to be waived. They were way above the player limit at about 18 guys. They're now at 17, not including their two-way. So presumably they have to waive or find a trade for one of these two guys, or excuse me, both of these guys. And not only that, shout out to our listener from Playback, Zoe Hot, who came on the stage the last time we did a playback. You guys should go check it out, playback.tv/5RSN. We're still going to keep doing them. And he had some great contributions to the show because he saw what we were talking about with the Spurs, because we kind of mentioned it there. And he threw a wrench into the whole conversation when he mentioned the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, when you go look at their payroll, they apparently have 22 guys on their cap sheet. And I think that includes the two-way. I have to double check. But the thing is, you can't just convert the standard contracts into two ways. That's not a thing you can do, right? So it's not like you could just pick and choose two guys for each team and be like, okay, those are going to be their two ways. That payroll doesn't include Exhibit 10s, which are the contracts that get converted into two ways. So it's really interesting, some of these situations going on here. How do the Thunder and Spurs figure out trades for some of these guys? Assuming that they don't want to just eat the price of all these contracts and waive everybody. Maybe they don't care, for all I know. But I think that's going to be interesting. Lamar Stevens is still out there, right? He's kind of a defensive wing who's, I think, 6'7", 230 pounds. So he's a wing size player who can play defense, but I think that's something that would be more interesting for the Heat if they lost one of Caleb or Highsmith in a Dame trade, right? I think Lamar Stevens would make sense there, but I don't see any playing time for him. Cedi Osman, who was traded to the Spurs this summer, is another guy who I'm not sure how it would work. It might have to be in a trade because I think he makes just under $7 million. And then from there, it's guys who have even more money. Reggie Bullock, Doug McDermott, all of those guys are Spurs. And I'm not sure how many of those guys they're going to keep. So those are just some names to watch out for. I think Ken Birch is going to be dropped too. But the Heat don't have any need for an extra big right now. I know some people are going to debate with me there. And from the Thunder side, it's even harder to figure out, like I said, because they have so many more players. A lot of them make smaller contracts. So it just makes it really tough to try to figure out who is going to actually be available if they do waive or trade these guys. But I'm just kind of a notifier. Just watch out for the Thunder and the Spurs because I don't really know what's going to happen there. Some of those guys may or may not become available.
Yeah, and the point to be made too is that Heat fans kind of freaking out about some low end free agents who the Heat have missed on in the Dame pursuit. The Heat are fully aware that other players may come available to them at some point. And you look at even like Caleb Martin a couple years ago, and the way that thing played out, there could be another guy like that. I wouldn't even assume that the two ways are all going to go to players that were on the Heat Summer League team, even though there clearly were 3 or 4 guys who were in the mix for that. But there will be other players available. And I will say this over and over. This is kind of cycles back to the beginning of the episode. When you have players like Jimmy, Bam, and Dame, they make everybody else better. So you don't necessarily need high-end prospects as part of your program or as part of your back end of your rotation. They will figure out a way to make that work. It's a lot different when you got 3 stars than when you got 2, and particularly when you got a star that has the kind of gravity that Dame has. That would change everything. I will continue to update you on everything. Check out mosaics.com. That's Stones and More. Mortgagebyarash.com. Better Edge. Use that code 5RSN. For Alex and Ethan, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.